Urban ecology is a study of living things in an urban environment. This study can take many forms, though, especially when looking at the Phoenix metro area. Phoenix is one of the strangest and most extreme urban ecosystems in the U.S. Unlike many other big cities that grow out of forests, wetlands, and grassland, Phoenix was placed right in the center of the Sonoran Desert. One of the most influential concepts in urban ecology is habitat fragmentation, when pieces of usable habitat are broken up into smaller chunks. When looking at Phoenix, it's pretty much a perfect example of that. You got a park here, golf course over there, shady neighborhood a couple miles away, but almost nothing connecting them. To a bird, the city isn't one continuous place, it's more like islands. Each island has different food, shade, vegetation, and protection. Moving between them means crossing open areas that are hot, exposed, and pretty much lacking resources. That kind of fragmentation has a massive effect on how species can survive and where, and how many species can show up at all. Now that we know just how impactful habitat fragmentation is in an urban setting and how dry the Sonoran Desert is compared to other urban environments, I began questioning just how much do these green spaces actually affect these urban birds' ability to feed, migrate, nest, and overall live a productive life. For my project, I raised the question, how does urban green spaces affect bird species richness in the Phoenix metro? Species richness is defined as the number of unique species in a given area. While there are many factors that affect species richness, I've decided to focus particularly on how green spaces affect species richness. The term LTER stands for Long-Term Ecological Research. It's a network of research sites across the U.S. where scientists study how ecosystems change over long periods of time. The Phoenix site, in particular, officially called CAPLTER, or Central Arizona Phoenix LTER, has been running since 1997. That means researchers have been watching Phoenix grow, expand, heat up, and shift for nearly 3 decades. When looking at the CAP LTER, there are 10 primary neighborhoods where data was collected over different periods of time. An awesome aspect of the CAP LTER is all the different types of data collected. They're keeping track of bird counts throughout the years, arthropod counts, as well as tracking environmental data such as temperature and precipitation levels. They also send out social surveys to better understand how the residents of these neighborhoods feel, and potentially how this affects the environment they live in. Thanks to the help of my classmates in urban wildlife ecology, data was compiled from the CAP LTER and averages were obtained. With 3 years of data for each neighborhood, we're able to get a decent grasp on the species richness in each neighborhood. To quantify the distance to the nearest green space or park, I used data obtained by another classmate, Declan. Here's a representation on how the mean was found. First, we found each corner and then took the distance to each green space from each corner and found a mean. And that provided us with the mean distance for each neighborhood. Prior to conducting this cross-assessment, I hypothesized that there would be a decrease in species richness as neighborhoods got further away from green spaces. I say this because when there is parks and green spaces, these usually attract more native species, while extremely urbanized areas generally have more of the urban adapted species. Here we got the data all compiled for all 10 neighborhoods. I threw it in a graph to get a visual representation. The first thing you may notice is the trend line is completely straight, indicating that there's not a correlation between species richness and green spaces. I also ran a Pearson's correlation coefficient test to check for correlation and got a value of 0.032, supporting my graph that there's no correlation in this data. You might be thinking the same thing as me now. Why? Now that we know the distance to green spaces doesn't affect bird species richness, we need to start looking at other possible factors. Parks in Phoenix are not all the same. Some will be purely dry desert, while others may have a large pond, tree cover, and plenty of grass fields. This could show that habitat quality may be a better indicator for species richness, well, at least in the Phoenix metro. In Phoenix, one of the biggest factors influencing bird species richness is water availability. Because we live in a desert environment, water is naturally limited, and that makes any area with consistent water a magnet for wildlife. Even small features like a backyard fountain, drip irrigation, or a shaded lawn create microhabitats that support way more species than the surrounding dry landscape. This pattern becomes even more obvious in riparian areas like the Gilbert Riparian Preserve or the Lower Salt River. These areas have consistent water year-round, dense vegetation, and diverse habitat structure. As a result, they support some of the highest bird species richness in the entire Phoenix metro. Even though they're surrounded by urban development, the presence of water creates pockets of biodiversity that far exceed typical desert or other suburban areas. In Phoenix, there's actually a lot people can do to help support birds. One of the biggest things you can do is adding more tree cover. Planting native trees and shrubs like mesquite and palo verde will help create shade, food, and nesting spots that many species, especially the native species, rely on. Making your yard more bird friendly can also make a huge impact on what birds you see, like putting up more natural landscaping, putting up bird feeders, and also since water's so limited here, even something like a shallow bird bath or a small fountain creates a great habitat that birds will come to year round. When more homes add little pockets of suitable habitat like this, they create a network of greener, healthier spaces across the city. That means more birds, more biodiversity, and a Phoenix that feels more alive. Small steps really do make a big difference, especially when us humans built this city and it is our duty to protect and support the species that inhabited the area long before us.